Hello and welcome back to another AP Sports video. Today we are going to be going over the Atlanta Hawks and really my expectations, kind of my playoff prediction for this team. They are coming off of a pretty trash 2019-2020 season, but they had a fantastic offseason and things are looking up. But before I get into that, please do like this video and subscribe if you enjoy. I know it may seem really small and little to you, but it really does help when you subscribe. It gives us a little bit more motivation. I mean, we're sitting pretty at 196, but I'd love to raise that a little bit more and just meet some goals by the end of 2020. But yeah, thank you for subscribing if you did, and we'll get right into the video. So to start off, this Hawks team was not good last year. And what they did in this offseason was pretty damn impressive. Trae Young led the Hawks last year to a pretty pitiful record. They were bottom of the East, bottom of the barrel. I mean, you're getting the scraps if you're talking about the Hawks about, 6 months ago. So Trae, he averaged 30 points, 9 assists, 4 rebounds. He had an insane offensive year. He was an all-star starter in his second year, which is extremely impressive. But I mean, you can't talk about Trae Young's amazing offense without talking about his horrendous defense. Trae Young is one of the worst defenders for the amount of time he plays in the NBA. He's a liability to his team. He hurts them on that side of the ball, and defense is very, I'm sure you're aware, but defense is extremely important. And a lot of people, I think, kind of overlook that. Offense is really pretty and it's really nice and fun to watch, but defense is just as important. I mean, they have basically the opposite of Trae Young with Chris Dunn, whose offense is horrible, but his defense is incredible. And obviously you know more about Trae Young than you know about Chris Dunn. That's not really the greatest example to compare those two players, but Trae is an amazing offensive player and a horrible defender. Chris is the opposite, and you can kind of tell that Chris Dunn doesn't really get any recognition in the league, whereas Trae was an all-star starter, and deservedly so. His offense is incredible, but I'm gonna need to see more defense out of him if this team's really gonna get anywhere, get anywhere of substance. I mean, yeah, you might make the 8th seed, but what does that really give you? A lot of teams make the 8th seed. The Magic make the 8th seed. Look at them, they're horrible. Nobody cares about the Magic. But to move away from Trae Young on the offensive side of the ball, I want to talk about the coaching staff, and that's Lloyd Pierce. This is his 3rd year as the head coach for the Atlanta Hawks. He's been in the league coaching-wise since 2007. He played a little bit overseas ball. I mean, he's pretty young for a head coach, but I don't really know what to expect from him. I don't think a lot of people do. He hasn't really done anything in Atlanta, obviously, but I mean, what is going to happen if this team ends up making the playoffs? Because as many have stated before, coaching is just as important as having the right players in the playoffs. I mean, we saw it with Erik Spoelstra, amazing head coaching season. Nick Nurse, obviously. I mean, these guys are really just as important to this team as their stars. And plus, there's Mike Budenholzer for the Bucks, who was a detriment to his team and ended up costing his team big time in the playoffs. So I'm curious to see how that's going to work out, because we've never seen Lloyd Pierce in any sort of a position where anything he does really matters when it comes to coaching. So definitely want to see how he reacts to that pressure. But before we talk even more in depth about where I think they might be in 2021, I want to talk about their free agency. This offseason for them was fantastic. I'm just going to name some of the players they signed. They got Chris Dunn on a steal, I think. 2 years, $10 million deal, $5 million a year. I mean, Chris Dunn's an incredible defender off the bench. He brings a lot of energy. That is a steal. 2 years, $10 million. My Bulls, I mean, I was worried if we matched him, it was going to be a 20, 25. So I think Chris Dunn definitely, the Hawks got him for pretty cheap, and I think they did a good job with that signing. Then there's obviously Gallinari, who they signed to a 3-year, $61.5 million deal. A question with that is really, where does he fit? They have so many big guys, but when it comes down to the just minute details, like, he's a great player. He was amazing on the Thunder last season. I think he's one of the best centers in this game. Or he's not even really a center, power forward, center, whatever you want to call him. He's kind of like a hybrid. I really like him. He's a great three-point shooter. He can space the floor. He's going to be really good for them, but I have questions about where he'll fit into this lineup. Bogdanovic, obviously, kind of stole him from the Bucks. They got him on 4 years, $72 million, which is a very, very large contract. But, I mean, they obviously wanted him, and in order to get him, they kind of had to overpay a little bit, in my opinion. Bogdanovic, great three-point shooter. He's got a lot of offensive talent. I mean, we saw it this last season. He kind of came into his own. I also think that he's a pretty underrated passer. He averaged like 4.5 assists last year. He gets it done on the offensive side. His defense is, it's okay. It's nowhere near Trae Young bad, but it's not amazing. I think Bogey can be a very solid player for this team, and he's going to be valuable because the Hawks, as good as Trae Young is at shooting threes, we're not a good three-point shooting team, and he adds a lot of shooting. So does Gallinari. So those three, Trae, Gallinari, and Bogdanovic, immediately raised this team's three-point percentage. And then they got Rondo, another guy, on 2 years, $15 million. Rondo, I think, although he may not wow you on the court during the regular season, obviously he's a very important piece in the playoffs, but he's not like an amazing player anymore. He's definitely past his prime, but he's going to be such a good mentor for Trae Young. They are both incredible playmakers, but Rondo is one of the best passers we've seen. He's averaged big, playoff Rondo's a whole thing. He lights it up in the playoffs. That's going to be valuable. He's got a ton of experience and veteran knowledge to give to Trae Young, who hasn't really had too many veteran guys with him. I mean, he had Vince Carter, but they're different players. Vince Carter and Trae Young are very different players. Rondo and Trae, obviously Trae is much better offensively. Both very good passers. Rondo's not a very good shooter, but they can shoot. We saw Rondo shoot a little bit in these most recent playoffs, and Trae's an amazing shooter. I'm excited to see what Rondo brings to the table for Trae because I think it's going to elevate Trae even more. I can see Trae averaging a double-double, 10 assists, 30 points. Like, he almost had it this last year with 30 and 9. So I'm really, really happy to see them two together. I think that's a perfect fit for Rondo, especially like if they do end up making the playoffs, where I think they will. He's going to be valuable. I mean, off the bench as a point guard, even in the regular season, he'll be pretty good for them coming off the bench as the backup point guard. Definitely he's a little old. I don't know how well his body's going to hold up. He obviously, when he went to Chicago, he got injured. He was injured in these most recent bubble all the way up until, a little bit into the playoffs. So we'll see what happens there. Hopefully he can stay healthy. And then to move away from their free agents, I want to talk about who they drafted. They had the 6th overall pick in this most recent 2020 NBA draft. They picked Onyeka Okongwu with their pick. I love this pick for the Hawks. I think he's going to fit perfectly with Trae. Like I said in my Onyeka video, which was a little bit before the draft if you want to go watch that, I talked about how if he went to a team like the Warriors or the Hawks, he could become an incredibly important piece because Trae Young's pick and roll with Onyeka is going to be incredibly good, I think. I think it's going to be, in a few years, top of the league when it comes to pick and roll offenses if Onyeka develops like I think he will. Another thing I love about the Onyeka pick is he will not come out starting, which you may think is a bad thing for the 6th overall pick. But when you're rebuilding a team, they've got Capella. They're gonna have Onyeka for years to come. So Onyeka can kind of learn from Capella and take a little bit of that defensive stance. He's a great defender, and Capella is too. So I think he elevates them from the bench, and he's a great backup. Sorry, I got cut off there. Yeah, Onyeka, he looks good. His defense, obviously, I want him to take those things away from Capella and learn. Moving on, I want to talk about a little bit. 50th overall pick, they got Skylar Mays. I think he's a pretty good player. He brings pretty good playmaking, great three-point shooting. That'll help them space the floor for sure. And then they've got a good player offensively. Like in the 50th overall pick, they got a pretty good guy. I mean, for a second rounder, it's hard to kind of stand out, but I think Skylar Mays does stand out just a little bit. I want to move off from the free agents and kind of talk about this starting lineup that the Hawks have. So, obviously, point guard, there's Trey. Then shooting guard, Bogdan, like I said. And then small forward, a couple questions there. DeAndre Hunter was actually the 4th overall pick in the 2019 NBA draft. So, I like Hunter. He's definitely going to be there at the 3 spot. He's got a good 3 ball. He looks like he's got some sort of something. I don't know. DeAndre Hunter and Cam Reddish are kind of like players that I have questions about. Just what is their role on this team, especially with all these new people coming in. But Hunter will get the start at small forward. Power forward is really where the controversy lies for this Hawks team. So, as I stated, they got Danilo Gallinari, but the GM for the Hawks came out, Travis Schlenk is his name. He came out and said that Gallo will be behind John Collins, who, obviously, if you know anything about the Hawks, John Collins, great player. He's a great power forward for them. Amazing 3 ball. He's just a good overall offensive, and he's got some defensive prowess. He's an okay defender. But he's been injured. He's had his suspension troubles, which you never want to hear from any player is the suspension troubles. So Gallo will be sitting behind him. And I think this is a lot to do with kind of pushing John Collins. Not that they gave somebody a $62 million deal over 3 years to push somebody, but I think Gallo will be very important for the playoffs. And they want to see what they have in John Collins. I mean, this is John Collins' last year of his deal. Next year is up. This is his last year to prove himself and get something. Get a bag, you know? And if he doesn't, he might be getting either re-signed with the Hawks, traded possibly. There's a lot of things the Hawks can do with this dilemma they have, but they obviously know now, whatever they do with John Collins, they have a solid player in Gallinari, a good player. Not even just solid. Gallinari is a good player. He was a fantastic on the Thunder last year. He brings a lot of spacing. He's a good offensive player with okay defense. I like him a lot. And the fact that he's behind John Collins, something doesn't sit right. I just feel like they're trying to shove John Collins just a little bit forward just to kind of give him that extra push. Hopefully it works out for him, but if it doesn't, like I said, it's like a safety plan. They've got Gallo. They're good to go. If they lose Collins, it doesn't completely mess up their future. They're not relying on Collins to be something. They're not taking a gamble. They might see what they have and then go the safer option, is what I'm expecting. Center position, Clint Capella will be starting, and Okongwu will back him up, like I said. I think that's going to be pretty good. It's a good center duo to have. Okongwu's a great defender. He's got a lot of potential with that pick and roll game. It's amazing. Him and Trey are going to be elite, I think. And yeah, so, I mean, that's the starting 5. So Trey, Bogdan, Hunter, Collins, Capella. And then they'll have backups, Rondo, Chris Dunn, Gallinari, and Okongwu. So take that as you will. I also think Cam Reddish and Huerter are going to kind of slot in. You know, Cam Reddish and DeAndre, pretty similar players. Both will probably play small forward. Huerter, I think he can play small forward and shooting guard. He has talent. I like Huerter. He's got potential as a good player. He can be great coming off the bench for them, and especially in the playoffs when things matter a lot and you need a little bit more offense on your bench to give your guys rest. So I'm excited to see what happens with that. Last thing I want to talk about before I get into my playoff prediction, I guess, is they hired a new coach. Not a head coach, but they hired a new coaching staff, assistant coach, in Nate McMillan. So Nate McMillan was fired from the Pacers last year after losing to the Heat in the first round. I actually really like Nate McMillan. I don't think he's gonna wow you as a head coach, but as an assistant coach, he's going to be very good. I mean, out of his 16 years in the NBA, I mean, he's got to the playoffs 9 times. He's going to be really, really beneficial to Lloyd Pierce, a third-year head coach who's never really been anywhere or done anything as a head coach, to talk to this guy who's been in the league since 2001. Like, Nate McMillan's a good guy. He brings a lot of energy. I think he's going to be able to connect with the staff and these players, and I'm excited to see that. I know it's a little bit underrated. It's not as talked about. But, like, just as an example, Eric Spoelstra, the head coach of the Heat, was talking all sorts of trash to the Pacers for kind of even doing this to Nate McMillan, talking about how he has a ton of respect for Nate McMillan, that he's a great head coach, that giving him that weird extension, then to fire him is just to further their own agenda is just not a great thing for any organization to do. But again, finally, I want to move on to my playoffs, my predictions for the Hawks, what I really think this team can do, and I don't really know what to say because I hate this notion that the East is a cakewalk. I really don't think it's a cakewalk. It's obviously nowhere close to as competitive as the West, but it is not an easy stroll to the playoffs. So you've obviously got the Nets, the Heat, the Raptors. You've got the Sixers. You've got the Bucks and the Celtics. I mean, it's getting slammed for 8 spots. Like, then there's these Wizards come in, and they kind of steal the show a little bit. Bradley Beal, Russell Westbrook, and now that John Wall is gone, like, they're going to be good regular season-wise. I think that this team will make the playoffs pretty easily. It just depends on the competition the Hawks bring to the table. So my prediction for the Hawks is I don't want to say 7-8. It's on the edge of not even showing up. I mean, I like the Hawks a lot, and they've got a very bright future with Trae Young, and all these contracts aren't like super short. 3 years for Gallo, 4 for Bogdan. They've got 2 on Chris Dunn, 2 for Rondo. So, I mean, only time will tell, obviously, but I'm excited to see. Okongwu's another piece they've got. Depending on what happens with Collins, they've got Capella. This team's loaded for the future. Just depends on what they can do now, and are they going to just be that 8 seed that gets swept in the first round? Or are they going to maybe make some noise? Trae Young can turn on the Jets in the playoffs, maybe. We don't know yet. So that is my prediction for the Atlanta Hawks. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe. It really helps us, it motivates us, and I'd love it if you could do that. And that is going to be it. I thank you guys so much for getting this far in the video, and peace.